Hello everyone. In this episode, we're going to break down Moon Knight episode 4 and try to explain that ending as best as possible. Jumping right in, Layla has some awesome scenes this episode. It really shows more on why her and Mark are partners and how she has to save him sometimes too. Because immediately as the episode opens up, they're being swarmed by some of Arthur Harrow's men and she takes them out all by herself with a couple of flares. So it was pretty cool to see that she can definitely hold her own. And might be one of the reasons why Khonshu has his eyes on her. Early on, we also see that there are far more gods imprisoned than we knew about. The real question is why? Why are so many gone, and is there something more sinister going on with the current roster of the gods? Could they have turned on the others and purposefully imprisoned a lot of them because they disagreed on things? I think this will be explored more in the next two episodes. And then we get this wild love triangle between Mark and Layla and Steven. Now her and Steven are interested in one another, leaving Mark just to watch it all? That's pretty rough. However, Steven did hold back at first and told Layla the truth about why Mark was distancing himself from her. But then he just kind of threw it out the window and kissed her and was really hoping for a lot more there. So is it cheating? I mean, it's the same person, but it's not. I mean, you can't blame Layla too much because they look exactly the same, but she knows that they're not the same person, so it's just a little weird. And they're still married. Speaking of Steven, he gets to show off a lot more of his Egyptian knowledge and how he's just as useful as Mark is, really. Which was nice to see his character fledged out a little bit more. Because we picked up with him in the beginning of the show, and he's always been this character that is, oh, he's not as good as Mark or Layla, and so it was nice to see that he's proved himself even more. Then fast forwarding a little bit, I was not expecting to see mummies at all, but it does make sense, right? And it was pretty gruesome as well, with his arm coming off, and it's probably one of the darkest things we've seen, seeing him try to stab Layla with his bone. It was pretty cool. I also found it pretty funny that we spent this whole time watching Layla struggle to get across that giant gap safely, just for that mummy to come out from an alternate route that was right next to it the whole time. And then it's revealed that Mark was there when Layla's father was murdered by supposedly another mercenary. I kind of like the idea that this more sinister seeming third personality was actually the reason, was actually the cause of her father's death. Maybe he was the one that murdered him. That's not how it goes in comics, but I think that'd be a pretty interesting twist in the show. Just drive a little more tension between not only the personalities within Mark's mind, but him and Layla, especially if he's known about it this entire time. After Mark seemingly dies, I think he could have been transported into the Overvoid that we previously heard about, where the gods like to stay. Like I was saying, in the comics, Khonshu is actually the one who orchestrated this psychiatric hospital. But in the show, it could be the other gods to make Mark forget that he ever served a god, since Khonshu is now imprisoned, or maybe it's Ahmed. There could be a numerous amount of answers. It's honestly very confusing, but we're going to try and make some sense out of it. Another idea is that what if these are just memories from Mark as a kid? And the movie is what he based Steven off of. I mean, the whole episode was essentially the same thing as the movie he was watching. That was titled Tomb Buster. They had the same plots throughout. So the episode does a really good job in making you think that he manifested the whole scenario the whole time throughout all the episodes. And adding on to this memory idea, in the cast list we already have young versions of Mark's parents. So potentially in a flashback or something, we're going to see something traumatic that could have happened to his parents, and that may be the reason why his mind is so fractured and why he needed to make Steven. So this hospital could be in the Overvoid and be a vision from the gods just to kind of mess with him. It could be us revisiting his memories and such, or it could be his version of going through the field of reeds that we talked about in a previous episode. It's very confusing. As soon as we're dropped into the hospital, we see numerous things that would be what Mark's illusions, if the entire show was illusions, were based on. Listing these things off, we see Crawley, aka the Golden Statue Guy, as he's calling out these bingo numbers. Then we see a man with a Rubik's Cube that Steven was seen playing with in the first episode. We see Steven's old boss holding one of the stuffed animals from the museum. We see a drawing that resembles Khonshu depicted as a hummingbird. We see the fake cops that kidnap Steven. We see cupcakes that represent the cupcake truck from the first episode. Gus, the goldfish that Steven had, as well as his postcards. And then to finish it off, we see Mark fall out of his wheelchair, similar to how Steven would fall out of bed, as he drops a Moon Knight figure. There's also a few other small characters that we can see, like the tour guide that Steven almost went out on a date with. One of them is Anton's workers. There's a few other smaller roles like that. These ones are a little harder to confirm, but you get the idea. There's numerous callbacks. And it's really trying to get us to believe that everything was fake all along, when numerous things in this setting just don't make sense. Oh, and we also see Layla eating these marshmallows, like in the beginning of episode 3. She also has a red scarab on her pinkies, which not only calls back to how her father called her his little scarab, but could also be a potential reference to the comic book villain known as the Scarlet Scarab. And then we meet Arthur, who is apparently Mark's doctor, and there's a few more callbacks to other episodes, such as we see a picture of Germany on the wall, as well as a few other references to its character, like the shoes and the Amit statues, and all of this just takes place in the same room that we saw in episode 2, inside of Arthur's base of operations. And so this episode is really trying to get us to believe that this whole time we've been following an unreliable narrator and it's just all been in his head. I even kept waiting for the episode to end because I was just waiting for the cliffhanger, and it just kept going and kept giving us reasons on why everything has been fake. And I don't think that it's going to stay this way, and I believe that's why we get the big reveal at the end of the episode, to kind of help Mark and Steven realize that none of this is actually real and they're not insane. But seeing Mark and Steven reunite in their own bodies and get along almost as best friends had to have been the highlight of the episode for me. Even if it was brief, it was just nice to see them align with one another after all the times that they fought up to this point. They both also wear outfits that we've seen Steven sleep in earlier in the season, which could help suggest that it's all in his head like a dream. And now, the third personality tease again. The red sarcophagus is most likely teasing Jake Lockley. In the comics, he's not evil, but the show seems to be changing that, especially considering he went on a killing spree in the previous episode, and since his sarcophagus was red and it was not the same as Steven's. One big theory I heard going around is if Mark did create at least these two other personalities, then maybe Steven is a manifestation of what Mark wants to be, or wants to be for Layla at least. If this is the case, then maybe the reason Jake could be so ruthless is because he's what Mark doesn't want to be, or is afraid of becoming, which adds on to each persona being so different from one another. And then the episode ends with the reveal of, I can't say it, Taweret, the goddess of fertility, and it truly leaves you questioning what is real. She was even referenced all the way back in the first episode in the museum, which was setting up her reveal. It just goes to show you that all these small details and all these little questions that we've had throughout all the episodes to this point were on purpose. They were made to make it seem like Steven has been an unreliable narrator this whole time. And they were clearly setting up major plot points. And so I've really enjoyed the mystery and theories that come with a lot of these Disney Plus shows. And so far, this show has done nothing but leave me speechless at the end of every single episode, with even more good questions and theories. But what do you think? Has Mark been in this hospital the entire time? Or is this simply an illusion? Comment down below what you think, because I'd love to hear it. And that's that. See ya.